In the Black Out Loud.
Disconnect from work. Ways you can avoid burnout. Even with laws on the right to disconnect from work, it can be tricky to turn off. Finding ways to balance work and life requires a combination of individual strategies and organisational support. By Megan Breen. This article has been edited for audio purposes. Article begins. Work-life balance sounds great in theory, but for many people, it can be difficult to achieve. As digital tools bring us closer and make communication more instant, they can also blur the lines between work and personal life, making it harder to disengage. As more and more people work remotely, often from home, this pressure to remain constantly connected has highlighted the need for change, with some countries moving to make it a legal right to switch off from work after hours. In August 2024, Australian employees gained a right to disconnect following significant amendments to the Fair Work Act 2009. This new legislation aims to establish clear boundaries around out-of-hours work communication. For small business employers, the right to disconnect will come into effect on August 26, 2025. Australia is not alone. Several European countries, including France, Belgium, Portugal, Germany, and Spain, have had disconnect laws in place for a few years. In Singapore, from December 1, 2024, all employers must fairly consider formal requests from employees for flexible work arrangements. However, disconnecting from work is not always easy. A study conducted by recruitment specialists Robert Walters shows 40% of Australians work outside of working hours, including during annual leave, and 71% say they don't feel refreshed after taking leave. It is a situation that can negatively impact any business, says Shay Peters, CEO of Robert Walters Australia and New Zealand. He says, excessive work hours, constant connectivity, and a lack of work-life balance can result in decreased productivity and increased turnover rates. In today's evolving job market, particularly in industries where remote work is possible, acknowledging the importance of allowing employees to disconnect has become crucial in attracting professionals. So, how can employees and their bosses navigate the challenges of maintaining a healthy work-life balance in a world that is constantly on and find ways to disconnect effectively? Develop the right strategies. The answer lies not just in legal protections, but in prioritizing mental well-being, encouraging boundary setting, and fostering the flexibility employees need to recharge, argues Simi Rayat, organisational psychologist and executive coach at Wellbeing Face. She says, it is important to explore strategies for effectively disconnecting, both as individuals from our roles and workplaces, and as leaders and managers who create a culture where people feel comfortable disconnecting when it's appropriate. Rayat says, this should align with the work that needs to be done, ensuring it is done effectively and to a high standard, while also promoting the well-being, satisfaction, and fulfillment of the team. The best approach is to communicate with your team and set realistic expectations from the start, Rayat adds. Have a two-way conversation at the start of a project so you can set everyone up for success and recognize that we're all going to need time to disconnect. Setting clear boundaries should be part of that conversation, otherwise the lines can easily blur, as the temptation to check and respond to emails or texts will always be there. Rayat says, establish and communicate clear start and end times for your workday, especially when working from home. If you are working remotely, create a specific area for work and leave that space when the workday ends to create a mental and physical boundary. Disabling notifications for work-related apps and emails outside of work hours is also a good tactic, as well as resisting the urge to check emails continuously by setting specific times to read and respond to any messages received. Rayat advises, outside these times, stay away from your inbox. Make it official. In industries where employees are always on, or where client demands are high, the challenge to maintain work-life balance can be even more challenging, says Shay Peters. He says employees can effectively manage their right to disconnect by choosing not to engage digitally outside of working hours and establishing boundaries for themselves. However, there is sometimes a pressure and expectation for employees to respond immediately, especially in a global work environment with stakeholders in different time zones. It means clear strategies need to be in place and communicated to all employees. Peters says, one approach is for companies to implement a formal policy to regulate digital communication channels and mitigate communication outside of work hours. For instance, they could use email settings to delay the delivery of messages until the next day. Leading by example is also important, and managers should set the tone for the team by prioritizing their own work-life balance, he says. Peters says, my role means that a lot of my stakeholders are in different geographies and time zones. To ensure smooth communication, I make proactive efforts throughout the day to address their needs and concerns. I prioritize completing all tasks before the end of my workday and make sure to allocate personal time whenever possible to maintain a healthy work-life balance. I've learnt the hard way that those thoughts and stresses about work will impact my amount and quality of sleep, so I have a strict rule for not checking emails before bed.
In the Black Out Loud.